We'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Claims in the amount of $9,901,684.83.
So this is so high, but we had the purchase of our public works facility and our police department.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd explain, because that's a big one. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And it wasn't in those reports.
They were wires and not checks.
Move to approve if not.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the bid from Market & Johnson in the amount of $199,998 for the construction of the Williams Park restroom and reallocate $45,000 from the 2024 Prospect Park Playground Replacement Funds.
Well, good evening, Finance Committee. Michael Mraz, Director of Public Works. So in front of you tonight is to approve a bid to replace the Williams Park restroom. It is long overdue. I know, Randy, you've made comments in the past. It's falling apart basically, and it's been in the CIP for a couple years now. We bid this project out last fall, didn't receive a single bid. Rebid it out this spring and received 5 bids, so I was happy to see that. Lowest bid came in at the stated amount of $199,998 from Market & Johnson. We did have $175,000 in the CIP for this restroom replacement, so obviously a little short there. And then we have used some money out of that $175,000 to pay EA Studios to do the plans and specifications. So we have $155,000 or $155,500 remaining in that CIP line item. So I'm recommending that we reallocate some money out of the Prospect Park Playground CIP line item, which is in 2024, to cover the difference. And we'll just make some adjustments to what we do up at Prospect Park to offset that. So recommending approval of the bid from Market & Johnson.
I'll move to approve with a question, and that it would be, I don't want us to rob Peter to pay Paul. Prospect Park gets neglected again.
Right.
And then we get behind in now the
Right.
development up there, so.
Yep. So basically what we'll do up there is, like I said, it was for playground replacement for the equipment up there. So we might not be able to go as big with a certain item. We might have to cut back on something.
What
but
was the item that we did 45 for? Do you remember? For Prospect Park?
we had $200,000 set aside for Prospect Park.
Has there been any design work or anything done yet?
Nope, not yet. Nope.
Sure. So, but you're going to be working on it with the park board this summer?
Correct.
This year?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll second the motion, and I would like to comment that I think it's really important to have basic restroom facilities
Yeah.
in all of our parks. And they're pretty lacking. I mean, there was a building there, but yeah, not so good. So I think it's important that we can move ahead with this. And yes, we obviously want all the playground equipment and to not neglect one park, but this one definitely needs the work as far as the bathroom. So I second the motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Discussion further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Contract for city legal, thanks, Mike. Contract for city civil legal services, Eckberg Lammers, PC.
I have a concern because I think this is something that should go out to bid. So we have, if you'll go on the basic city website to look on the finance department under purchasing, we do require all our department heads to have bids for, obviously, things were being purchased, equipment and so on, but also services are listed on that, and there's a whole matrix that's been developed as part of our public policy. So I think it's best practices of what we have established in the past, and tell me if I'm wrong, but are we required by law to get a bid for an item this big? It is a contract position. It's not an employee. It's a 5-year contract. I feel, so I make a motion that we postpone this, have staff come back with a written RFP that we can go forward then and give other legal firms a chance to bid as well. And there may be, since there may be some competitive bargaining or negotiating, we might need to go into closed session at some point about that. My other point I would make too is, since we are hiring a city attorney, which is obviously a very key position, and on the list of who the city attorney works with, the mayor and the city administrator are the top people. So I think that's an important factor to take in consideration. So I realize that the contract is due to expire, but it's my feeling that we are not serving our taxpayers properly if we don't go to bid, and it's just proper government for us to do that. And so that's my motion, that we postpone it and get an RFP going.
I don't think we've done it in the past, Joy. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I think some of the challenging issues that Nick has guided us through in his law firm has been a huge help for us. I mean, we've had a lot of issues, not to mention the grotesque one we just got through. And he was a very strong advocate for the city and has been. I understand that.
Not
but
saying that. This is due
process-
diligence, fiscal responsibility.
Process, have not gone out for RFP that I'm aware of. And
Okay, well, if I've
No,
been
we-
told that the last time when the prior city attorney resigned and retired, that we did seek from proposals and we only got one bid.
Correct. That's what I
So
was
is
going
that
to say.
correct, Joyce? I mean, I was not on the council then.
That's probably why.
So I don't know whether RFP is the right term or not, but, right, we can discuss work product and things like that, certainly in closed session.
And I just would like to see a comparison of rates. Have you increased them or are they the same?
No, so, first of all, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about this for just a second. So, when we came in 3 years ago, the city had a long relationship with Kathy Munkitrick. And I don't think during that time you went out for RFP, you were happy with those services. You're not required to. You certainly can by policy, that's your right. You're not required to go out for bid on service contracts. So if you want to go out for bid, you can. That being said, when we came in 3 years ago, we said we're gonna hold our rates flat for 3 years, no increases. And so we've gone through significant inflationary period, and at the same time, we've charged $200 an hour for general legal services for each of the 3 years. As you note in the contract, we also have special exceptions. You've got employment. The city works with Kyle Gulia at the Von Briesen Law Firm, so while we have an employment attorney on staff, city doesn't utilize those services. The development services are all passed through to your applicants, and then there's a special service rate. So that's how the contract sets up. So as we've now moved forward through the first 3 years, we've proposed to increase the base rate from 200 to 225, which would take into account some incremental increases over those years. We hold the 225 flat for 2 years before we increase it, because I don't think we necessarily need to look at it and say we need to go up every single year. We're trying to be fair with the city and to give the city some budgeting certainty as well. So while you're certainly welcome to go out to bid, I would also note that our contracts have a termination provision. So if you decide that you don't want to work with us in the future, there's an opportunity to terminate at any time. So it's not as though you're locking yourself into a 5-year contract. You're really locking yourself into 120 days worth of commitment before you can terminate and move in a different direction. So those are the highlights, and I think it's important to view this as what it is, which is really that 120-day commitment. But certainly if you'd like to go out for bid, that's certainly within your discretion.
Do you care to tell us how many of the local communities surrounding City of Hudson you represent, your firm?
So, well, personally, I'm the city attorney in Hudson, in New Richmond, the town of St. Joseph, the town of Star Prairie, and a number of other small towns kind of throughout western Wisconsin. I also have one city over in Minnesota, the city of Grant. Our firm was founded on the municipal practice. We serve as the city attorneys in Woodbury and Blaine and nearly 20 other communities, both on the civil side and on the law enforcement prosecution side in Minnesota.
Thank you. I don't have an issue approving tonight. I don't necessarily think we need to wait to go or even do an RFP. But
I don't feel the need to either.
I'd like to speak a little further. I have asked for an evaluation of the city attorney's work product last summer repeatedly. I spoke to the city administrator, Aaron Reeves, repeatedly. It's in writing. He repeatedly denied me the opportunity to address some advice that the city attorney gave to the council. He gave advice that was directly contrary to state law, and it harmed me. It harmed me, and I believe that there's communication from Mr. Vivian to all of you that also harmed my husband, who is involved in the St. Croix Business Park. So if that refreshes your memory for my concern. Mr. Vivian gave you, the council, advice. Now, I asked to do this in closed session repeatedly. I want to just say that to you, Mr. Vivian, repeatedly requested it, because, and on every avenue, and I sought independent legal advice about it from several attorneys. And every time I approached the mayor and the city administrator, Aaron Reeves, he declined. He said, "You're not an employee, your contract, there's no way to evaluate, we don't evaluate the contract services." I do dispute the idea because it's right here on the bottom of the page, city website, purchasing and contracting. Purchases of and contracts for supplies, materials, equipment, and contractual services shall be based on competitive bids or quotations subject to guidelines. Yes, many times it's for another issue, but I asked for support. I got no support from the council, and no support from the mayor, and no support from the city administrator. I asked our city attorney repeatedly to acknowledge, asked him in writing several times, to acknowledge what the advice that he gave was contrary to state law. And here's the advice that he gave. He told you as council members that you could vote to exclude me from a discussion, that you as council members could vote to exclude me. And that goes contrary to everything in Wisconsin statute. The state of Wisconsin clearly specifies that you cannot vote to exclude someone. The duty to recuse, to step back, falls on the elected official or the appointed official. And if I don't do what is the right thing in that situation, then I would be subject to an ethics charge. And then I would have a right to defend myself at that case. But I have really sat on this for quite a while. It's bothered me greatly, and I've spoken to you, Mr. Mayor, about it last summer, and I've gotten no support, no help. That was directly contrary to state law, and he would not retract it. And that is harmful to me. He also wrote in emails to you implying that we don't know. Maybe her husband has got some financial gain from the St. Croix Business Park. We don't know what's going on there. Well, I found that very ironic because at that very moment when he wrote that email, our finance director had all of the records for St. Croix Business Park. All of the records were right here in City Hall. It was pretty obvious there was no financial compensation given to Dean Knudsen for his volunteer work and the other board members who have served probably a total of 25 years on the St. Croix Business Park, greatly increasing the Hudson tax base so that we can provide services for our residents. So I was very upset about that at the time. I had planned to recuse because I did not want an appearance of any problem. This goes back to when the city was talking with the St. Croix Business Park about purchasing a plot of land, a greenfield development that would have been for the Public Works building. Those negotiations, well, let me just say, bogged down. I don't know, we went months without any kind of report from either the mayor or Aaron Reeves. And then suddenly, you know, we're just going to throw in the towel. We're not doing it. Thankfully, there has been progress made so that the Public Works facility can move forward at a different location. But this is why I am asking for, I wanted to do this in closed session, but I've been declined at every turn. Yes, he has represented the city. I'm sure there's many times he's given good advice. I'm sure that you felt that way when he was in the courtroom defending you, Randy, and I would want to be defended by the city. I'm not sure that the city attorney should have been defending the elected officials when he was also being charged, you know, or accused by that individual. I mean, to me, I just have some problems with some of the issues, and that is why, actually, as much as saving money, I'm not disputing the cost, really. I just think we should have an opportunity to see if there is another firm that would like to work for the city of Hudson. Because, again, I have asked for an acknowledgement. I'm not asking for an apology. What's done is done. That's weak sauce. Acknowledge what you did was wrong, because it's directly contrary to state statute, and I could pull up 20 emails that I wrote about it last summer.
Well-
So that's my case here today.
And a little history is, there was a couple issues back before most of you were on the council. And I was directed by then city attorney to recuse myself in the same manner.
But it's not appropriate, Randy.
But I
You're-
did
but you're
because
not- it's-
of the same reason. And then I did not take it personal from there,
No, Randy.
from the city
okay,
attorney.
The meeting was on Monday, and on Friday, the city attorney distributed some information to the council members prior to their closed session on Monday. He did not include me on that email. He decided himself that I could not participate. That is not allowed, Randy. It's not about being offended. It's about the state law. It's about state statute. You're not allowed to vote to exclude someone.
And
It's not allowed.
I can understand that, and it's all the interpretation of the law.
Well, that's exactly what he said. If the law has been on the books for about 40 years, and Mr. Vivian's response was, well, it's never been tried in court. Well, since it's like a two-sentence law, maybe it's so obvious what the intent was that it doesn't need to have a court case. But I don't appreciate that approach, because I think that's kind of got us into the whole situation recently, Board of Appeals.
But I'm just wondering, is this becoming a personal problem which is affecting our policy decision-making?
Well, I mean, I've heard from many people. No, let me just say, I've had several conversations with people that are on our appointed boards that are quite upset about the interactions with the attorney.
Can I make a
don't believe they've
suggestion
come
here?
forward. Don't believe
Yeah.
they've come forward.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Yes,
All right, you're going to pull this from the consent agenda at the meeting?
I will, yes. We'll
Okay,
have to
then let's
discuss it
just,
again.
let's just move it forward to the council without a recommendation at this point.
Is that a motion?
That's,
Or
well,
she has a
she's got a
motion.
motion, but there's no
I
section.
was dying for a lack of a second, so
Okay, I will make the motion then that we move this forward without a recommendation.
Second.
A motion second to move this to the council without a recommendation. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
hi.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I don't have anything. Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Council meeting will start in a couple minutes. All right, we will call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Wakefield. Here. Knutson.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Brooke. Here. Hall.
Here.
All right, first thing up, citizen comments. This is your opportunity to speak on any subject relative to the city that is not on the agenda tonight. If you do have a comment, please come to the podium, identify yourself and your address. Try to keep your comments brief, and please try not to repeat other people's comments. So, does anybody have a comment? Any comment? Any comment? Any comment? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. We have a public hearing on our zoning ordinance, the downtown overlay district. And before we get into the public hearing, what we thought might be valuable was to have Mr. Josh Miller come up and explain a little bit about what's going on, and maybe with what he has to say, we'll answer some questions, or perhaps raise some different ones.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Josh Miller. I'm the senior planner with Cedar Corporation. We were hired back in 2022 to help update the zoning code, and that included the update to the downtown design overlay district, as well as the NR 118, which is a National Scenic Riverway ordinance. So we'll start with the downtown overlay district guidelines, and I believe this has been before the council before. And you've seen some of this. We had an open house back in May. We had two options for open houses. We had an evening session and a morning session to make sure we could get everybody to come. And we invited, I believe, mailings went out to all the businesses, and people had an opportunity to attend. And it was a good, the night session, we had a really good turnout. The morning session, I think it was just Mike and me and the press, I think was all that attended that session. But, so I don't want to get into too many details, but happy to cover whatever you need to after my presentation. So, really, so the purpose is really, changing the purpose of the district is really making it more prescriptive, or changing it from a more prescriptive code to making sure that the applicants, the developers, people that want to make changes to the downtown, provide the information you need in their applications. And so really we want to address strong pedestrian connections, preserving our historic buildings, minimizing adverse impacts, improving economic viability, and then restoring the riverfront management characteristics per NR 118. And that's the other section that we'll talk about. So this is your downtown overlay district. We included a little, I think it was a 300-foot buffer area where mailings were sent out to as well. This is the area that's covered by this overlay. And it has, and it includes other underlying zoning districts, so the underlying zoning districts still have meaning. The overlay district just requires additional processes for review of new development. And that's not a new change to this code. That's always been the case with this overlay district. We're just changing how it functions a little bit in the process. So the covered activities, really, we've split it up into minor alterations and major alterations. The major alterations would be a new building construction, any exterior alterations is different, or additions to existing buildings, all new parking lots in their landscaping, and then changes to existing color. And so what that means is anybody applying for those changes would apply for a certificate of design, and that would go to the Plan Commission for review. Minor alterations would be able to be reviewed and approved by staff level. So we're talking very, interior remodeling. We wanted to make sure that, people want to remodel their buildings on the inside. That's not going to impact the exterior. That's not going to be reviewed by the certificate of design. Replacement of windows and doors that have a similar size of what they have and matching color. Renovations to existing appearances of buildings, such as repainting, re-roofing, re-siding, if it's matching of what was previously there. And then replacement or construction or of damaged or destroyed materials, as long as it's matching to what was previously there. So the review process, we have a lot of things on here, and I don't want to go into too many details because it's, like I said, it's a lot of things, but we want to, maintain the architectural review standards that are currently present. There's a checklist that's included that the staff will hand out to applicants, and they have to meet certain thresholds in that checklist. We want to have the applicant demonstrate a strong narrative, so it's up to the applicant to provide the narrative for their project. We want to include elevations of buildings, photos, renderings, materials, site plan, lighting, landscaping, things like that. Those have to all be provided to the city. We want to make sure that those are within the context, scale, balance, and proportion, as well as unity and theme. So we don't just want to have in the middle of a block where it's historic buildings and they're nice brick buildings, and then you have like a modern architecture with all glazing and all glass. The intent is that there's some symmetry, there's some, context matters. You want to look at the neighboring properties and make sure that it's going to fit within the neighborhood. So this is kind of a rough example. So you want to make sure that the scale and visual continuity and balance is matching. You don't want to, if you have a 3-story building, you don't want to put up a 5-story building in the middle of a block, or nor do you want to have a 1-story building. You want to be able to have that kind of have a symmetry to the block and scale. Also, same with matching colors and building materials. So we put in some suggestions, but there's some flexibility built in here for the Plan Commission to have some considerations and review. That's what we felt was a good opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean that has to stay that way. The council can certainly look at more refined building materials, but it does give some flexibility. And again, it's the burdens on the applicant to make sure that they are meeting the standards of the design overlay district. We talked a little bit about building widths and facades, so we want to break up buildings. We just don't want these large facades that are just all static. So it has to have some relief. When you have over 100 feet of building, you want to have some changes to that. So it's not just all one long facade that doesn't have any relief to it. Metering and mechanicals, one thing that came up, and we just thought, well, in some cases there are building codes that prohibit you from covering those things up. So we said, when you want to be able to cover those up and screen them, but if there are some distance requirements for electrical meters and things like that, sometimes there's just not an opportunity to screen those things. So we did include some flexibility with things like that. Signs, right now, we do have some provisions in this ordinance for signs. One of our duties as your consultant is to update the sign code. That is going to be a future step of the process. So once we get to that stage, we didn't want to take out all the sign requirements in this section, but once we get to that stage, we will come back and kind of cut that part out of the design guidelines and include the design guidelines section in the sign code, because that's where it all makes sense. So, as I mentioned, there's going to be an architectural checklist, and certain standards will have to be met and meet at least 50% of the categories within the checklist will have to be addressed. So again, it gives a little flexibility to the applicant, but they also have to meet certain standards. The application process, basically from the time the applicant is submitted, it's a 60-day process. The Plan Commission has to review the application and make a decision within 60 days. Failure to do that, or some extension thereof where they have an agreement with the developer and the Plan Commission, would be considered an approval. So there's some due process. You want to make sure things are moving forward quickly. If the developer is opposed to the approval, then they would have a 30 days to appeal to the council, and the council can then make a decision after that. The fees would be part of your fee schedule, and what we're looking at doing is doing the review and approval in 2 steps for the zoning code. Tonight we'd be looking at consideration of this part of the code, and then later on, as we get further down the line to updating the full zoning code, we'd be looking to approve that as a separate ordinance. The nice thing about that is you can look to adopt this tonight, knowing that we have another ordinance update coming up in the near future. So you can let staff, see how staff works with it, see how it works for developers, and if there are some major hurdles or some issues, that would be an opportune time to bring those changes back when we update the whole entire zoning code. So I will never say an ordinance is perfect. You always have to kind of get into it, and you have to see how it's going to be applied to see if there's some changes or some things that maybe we didn't think of everything, and we know that there's always unique circumstances. So I think this is a good setup for this, because you have an opportunity to adopt this now or in the near future, and then see how it works, and then if there's some things that need to be changed, we'll come back and do that, because we know there's another process looming. So that is all I have for the downtown overlay.
All right,
I'm happy to
thanks,
take
Josh.
questions.
Thank you.
We're not going to take questions right now. This will come up later. We'll have an opportunity to do that. We'll do the public hearing first, and then we'll get into the motion and debate or discussion. All right, so next up, public hearing on ordinance 11-23 to rewrite chapter 255 to 17.1 through 255, 17.10 in the City of Hudson zoning code. So this is a public hearing. It's your opportunity to tell us your opinion on what's before the council here right now. If you do have a comment, once again, please come to the podium, identify yourself and your address. Try to keep your comments brief, and please try not to repeat other people's comments. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
One.
All right, so,
Be the same person. One's not in audio, I think it is.
pardon me?
I think it's one person.
All right, so we've got somebody on Zoom. If a person on Zoom has a question, electronically raise your hand and we will get to you. So, having said all of that, does anybody have a comment? Ryan?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm attorney Ryan Carey, and I've been asked by a number of real estate owners to attend tonight's meeting, offer some comments and concerns regarding the proposed code amendment, which was just explained. The property owners I'm here representing are numerous, and rather than read off the addresses, which are, I believe, 19 in total, I provided a list which is being passed around. As you will find, most of these properties, or a lot of these properties, are located on 2nd Street in the heart of this district. The owners of these properties include, without limitation, the Nordstrand family, the Foster family, the Rohde family, and B&A Realty. Before I get into my comments about the proposed amendment, I want to first commend the mayor, council, and staff for working on this project. My intent here is not to be critical in the nature of the amendment. I believe that the effort undertaken thus far to get to this point comes from a place of promoting responsible development in the downtown overlay district. Nobody's challenging that notion. And so again, I'm not here to offer criticism, but instead to offer some perspective and perhaps some ideas. So with that understanding, I wanted to take you through the general concerns that my clients have with regard to the proposed amendment, and do so before I explain some of the more specific concerns. So first, overall, when reading this amendment, the new language appears to introduce a great deal of what I would characterize as subjectivity to the design process. There are new terms and definitions that leave much room for interpretation. This can make redevelopment of a site all the more challenging, time-consuming, and costly. And although the amendment uses the term major alterations to define the activity to which the scope applies, I would suggest that some very minor things are included. For example, an exterior alteration to a building or a change to a building color all fall within what is considered to be a major alteration under this.
Excuse me, Ryan, will you quote the number that your concerns are coming from?
Sure, yeah, I'll get to specific sections, no problem, Randy, yep. There are also numerous sections of the amendment which appear to give the Plan Commission and Council discretion over the design phase of the development, and I find that to be troublesome as well, as what is aesthetically appealing to one can be considered as visually offensive to another. And so finally, this proposed language is in addition to the architectural review standards that are already found in the code. So we're adding another layer to the design phase of the project. So those are some of the general concerns that my clients have with the way the amendment reads. I want to take you through some now of the specific language. As was pointed out during the presentation, a section is now added which is labeled context, and it refers to how the proposal fits within the surrounding area. And as I read it, this would imply that a tear down of an old dilapidated house, which is near other structures, could be turned down because it is outside the context of other buildings surrounding it. I don't think that's the intent, but I do think the context definition is troublesome. I don't think it fosters progress, rather I think it actually impedes it. There are also terms like scale and balance and proportion that appear in the document as well. And if you read that, does that mean that if the code allows a 3-story building, but it is near other 2-story buildings, and an otherwise code-compliant building can be turned down simply because of what surrounds it? Again, that seems like a whole other layer of scrutiny that can be placed on development plans. Also, the terms unity and theme appear in the amendment. These terms might be the most troublesome as they leave the most up to interpretation. When redevelopment occurs within the downtown district, who decides if a developer is to mimic the architectural style of what we saw when Hudson was first settled, or is it to be similar to some of the more modern architecture we're seeing? Because as you know, we've got both in a very close proximity to one another. I want to give an actual example, and I'm biased. I was involved with this project. I'll disclose that from the upfront, but I want you to consider the riverfront project that's currently being constructed by Bruce Lenzen and Rich Cook on Buckeye Street near the marina. If you think about that, at least by all accounts that I've had contact with, that's going to be a vast improvement to the waterfront. It's going to be a beautiful building. But is the theme consistent with the marina to the south, or River City Center to the north, or the strip mall to the east? No, but I don't think we'd want that. So I think the unity and theme could be a little bit concerning as well. The amendment also contains a long list of materials that you saw have to be provided to the Plan Commission and staff to consider approving a project. Scale drawings, sketches, narrative descriptions, plans, building materials. It goes on. I think the time and money that will be spent on producing those materials with professionals may increase significantly. The final specific concern that my clients have is that, as noted, the amendment would allow the city, if it believes it needs some help deciphering a plan or reviewing a plan, to now hire its own architect or own designer and pass that cost on to a developer. So now the developer's paying its own team to produce the plans, and now another architect or designer would be hired by the city, and that cost passed on to the developer. And if you think we attorneys are hard to deal with, try to find 2 architects that agree on a particular style. I mean, I think that's difficult. So again, this perspective is offered not to cause anyone, or not ask anyone to abandon the concept altogether. Again, we applaud the efforts. I think there is something here, and I think something could be improved in the way things like this are handled. However, I do think that the owners of a downtown real estate, many of whom I represent are on this list, should have a little bit more to say about how this process would work. And I would submit to you that list that I've handed you is not insignificant. So what we are asking for is not that you abandon it. Like I said, we're asking that you simply hit the pause button. And if you do elect to hit the pause button, I'm asking you to do 2 things. Number 1, hold 2 to 3 meetings where only real estate owners within this downtown overlay or the representatives can attend and have a Q&A session with staff and Cedar Corp. Perhaps some of these concerns that we voiced here today can be addressed with simple changes or explanations. And secondly, consider expanding the exemption category. You saw the exemption applies to certain what are considered to be minor alterations. I would submit to you that list should grow. I think that there should be administrative review or an expedited process to apply to a greater list of proposed alterations and changes to buildings in the downtown district. So I thank you for your time and appreciate you listening to our comments today.
Thanks, Ryan. Any other comments? Karen?
I'm Karen Nessett. I live at 727 3rd Street, so I am in the overlay district. First of all, I just want to say that I actually like this direction that we're going. I think this is important to working to preserve what we all love about Hudson downtown. My concern partly is the overlay. My house is in that overlay district, and we're just south of Elm on 3rd, and there's two nice residential properties, mine and someone else's, and on 2nd Street, the same thing right behind me. This feels like this is sort of an avenue to make these commercial properties. And for those of you who have been around as long as I have, you know that I have an issue with making residential turning into commercial. So I put it there. I'm not sure why those residences were included in that overlay, but we're there. So the other thing is there are buildings that are not in here, and they are commercial. The AT&T building is not in there. And what used to be the old Norlake building on First Avenue, which is now a nice office building, that's also not in the overlay. So you've got a couple of commercial buildings that would not fall under these requirements. The only other concern I have really is that this all goes before Plan Commission. I personally believe that there should be someone with some design expertise who reviews this first, and that they could make a recommendation to planning or make some recommendations about how it could be addressed. But I don't think it should just rest because of the design elements. I don't think it should just rest with Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Oh, we got on Zoom? Did she raise her hand?
No. Not that I see.
Nothing?
Nothing.
All right. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Public hearing is closed. Ordinance 11-23 to rewrite Chapter 255-17.1 through 255-17.10 in the City of Hudson zoning code.
Josh, walk through the
Beg your pardon?
Josh, walk through.
We could. You want to walk through that, Josh?
The NR 118 or the Scenic St. Croix? Is that what we're on?
Aren't we supposed to vote on that
This is the,
B first? Vote on the ordinance that we just discussed?
I'm reading B, as I was wondering what,
If we have questions for Josh.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Time, okay, sorry.
No, I was wrong.
We're not on the Riverway yet, are we?
No, we are not.
Okay,
I
thank you.
misspoke.
All right, so, again, item B, ordinance 11-23 to rewrite chapter 255-17.1 through 255-17.10 in the City of Hudson zoning code. So Josh is here. Anybody have any questions?
I just want to, Josh, clarify how many meetings you had, or how many people showed up. You said none in the morning, and then how many in the second?
So I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was a Tuesday night and a Wednesday morning. Tuesday evening, we had probably about 30 people show up. We had at the fire station. We did, like I said, we had invites out to everybody, all property owners within the district, and had a lot of good feedback and went through the presentation. It wasn't, we have had some changes to this since then. I think the biggest change was the checklist that we have at the end. That was really requested by staff. So there was, I think the biggest question at the time was really changing it from a more prescriptive model to a more subjective model. Looking at being a little bit more flexible with what is being reviewed and how it's being reviewed. I certainly understand the attorney's concern, and we can certainly address questions if the council feels necessary to do that. But yeah, we did have opportunities to, and I think we sent out a survey as well, and we, have opportunities for people to reach out with questions on it, so.
So he had those he's representing a bunch of owners and property owners. He had subjectivity, design, and Ryan, what was your third? Context?
Unity and fame.
Can you touch on those and what was changed before? And one other thing about date, when was this last presented to Plan Commission?
I believe that was in September. It was last presented.
So we're approaching 6 months.
No, you guys just voted on it this month.
No, when we first started.
Oh, excuse me, thank
Present,
you.
yeah.
Okay, I thought you said last, you meant first. Okay, excuse me, Andy.
Yeah. Approaching 6 months, so there's been plenty of time for folks to.
Yeah, and I think the main holdup was really the scenic Riverway issue, trying to make sure we try to adopt those.
And I'm a little more sensitive to that, but if you could touch on some of the points that Ryan did go over, that would be appreciative.
Yeah, I think, he's really just talking about, and I don't know that he's wrong necessarily. I think the Plan Commission could deny something if there was a proposed three-story building, or like I say, a three-story building in an area that didn't have a three-story building, let's say a two-story. I think there would be a basis for denial based on the rules or the regulations in here. So would they have to? Not necessarily. That's where there's some flexibility with the Plan Commission to review that. But I think the intent is to really have some kind of a unifying theme in the downtown. That's what we kept hearing, that we wanted that historical characteristic. We didn't want to see the modern architecture in some cases mixed in with the historic. And so could you do that? There's no, like I said, there's some flexibility in the materials, and there's no hard and fast prohibition on these things. That's why there's some discretion with the Plan Commission. And if that's a concern to the council or to the residents, I mean, then that's not what's in this code. This code is not a black and white, hard and fast rule. And a lot of design guidelines do offer flexibility, in those cases. So, that's kind of the direction that we were going from the start. And if, like I said, if that's not the direction that's desired, we could put in more prescriptive requirements that are a little more black and white for developers, for the staff. It's just not the case in this.
I'm not sure that's the main point, but I think the main point is the whole subjectivity to it and who decides what. When you're a business owner, you own a building, ain't nobody gonna tell me what I'm doing.
Sure.
But you have to be obviously within reason of what we are requesting in our codes and ordinances. But where's that ultimately rests and who makes that decision? Is it Plan Commission? Plan Commission just stamps it and move it on one way or the other to City Council. Is it up to staff to redesign or to focus in on the narrow guidance that this would guide the architecture and how it's built?
Well, the application requirements would be up to, if the application is not complete, then that's, staff is reviewing that, saying, you know what, you're not meeting these, you're not fulfilling the requirements of the application, you're not going to get to go to Plan Commission for a certificate of design. But ultimately, if it's a complete application and it's a major alteration, that's going to rest in the hands of the Plan Commission.
Where's the off-ramp? If everybody says no to that rock you want to put on the facade, does he have an appeals process?
Yes, that would then go to council. So if they have an appeal to what the Plan Commission approved or denied, they could go back to the council, and the council would have 30 days to make a decision, or longer as negotiated with the developer.
Question?
Joy?
Thank you. I have a question. One is just kind of a yes and no. Have the lines been changed in the downtown overlay district?
I don't believe we changed any lines that were.
That's what I thought. I think one of the things that's challenging is zoning is very complicated, and finding it on the city website and seeing, I think that was one of the goals, was to make this simpler and to streamline some things, both for incoming parties, existing property owners, for the staff to help walk people through the process. So I certainly applaud that goal and that effort of streamlining and making some things simpler. But yes, we have had a downtown overlay district. It has been set aside since, I think, 2007. So that itself hasn't been changed. But here's another question. what's happened to the design review committee? When was the last time it met? Why did that just go away? I see that we're striking it from the new proposal. I need some history there from staff and others.
The commission operates as the design review committee currently.
But we used to have a sort of a citizen
Separate
one.
one, yes.
Business
That had never-
owners.
Was never established until.
It never took place?
Not as far as I'm aware, that it was not appointed, or maybe it was, but
Okay.
that was well before my time. There was not one that was active when I arrived in 17.
So that would have,
I think there was an active one.
pardon me, Randy?
For-
I think there was a lot before
some
you
point.
were here,
Okay.
but.
You know, it specifies an alderperson, chamber
No,
member.
wasn't that organized.
But it specifies it
Yeah.
in the part that's being redlined out, you know, that we're, and thank you for attaching the red line. This is important. We talked about this, a little confusing. Again, reading the code, reading a red line is also somewhat difficult, but the original agenda that came out for tonight did not have that attached. So that is a concern for me because I welcome comments and input from the public. And it is true, there was a meeting held last May to kind of get a feel and a flavor from people. What do you see? What do you want in downtown? What are your concerns? I don't know that we've had a similar meeting once this was written up, once the guidelines were in place and they started coming before the Plan Commission and ourselves as council members. So I hear what Mr. Carey is saying, is there's some stakeholders, major property owners that are engaged downtown that would like to have some input and some comment. I also read it to be fairly subjective, which may seem like it's very helpful. In other words, boy, we're gonna work with you. This is great. You can come in with your ideas, show us what you want, convince us. But that can be very discouraging if one person comes in with an idea and they think it's going to be adopted, because it does give some leeway to the Plan Commission to adopt things, but that person gets a yes and someone else gets a no. Well, Hudson is unique downtown. Every building's different, so we're not cookie cutter in any way. We definitely want to be, be very fair to anyone that's approaching the city and wanting to buy, enhance, build, do some infill development. So I think that's really important. Some of the verbiage that stuck out for me, for example, instead of saying this shall happen, there was it should happen. And there was even a place, and I'm sorry to scan through it here, I'll not be able to find it immediately, where certain materials were discouraged. But if the Plan Commission said it was okay, then you could do it. Well, so that's kind of the confusing aspect, I think. To me, I realize the intent was to make it user-friendly for developers, but if you can imagine, again, you've spent your architecture fees on something you really like and you hope it's going forward, and yours might get shot down, and then you have to go back to the drawing board again. So in some ways, I do wonder if being prescriptive is more helpful to the business community as they try to improve their properties.
And Joy, I want to correct myself yet again.
Yes.
There was one appointed. There was an issue
There
that
was,
came
okay.
up in, 17, 18, sometime in
Okay.
that time frame. They were appointed but never convened, as far as I
Okay.
remember correctly.
So they didn't really provide a lot of input or advice to the Plan Commission. I'm assuming it started at the same time that we established the overlay district. I think it was. I mean, I'd have to look
Yeah,
back
I-
at the
I-
original adoption line, but anyway, thank you, that was my comments.
So you'd rather, if I may ask a question, and feel free to jump in too, Joy, are you looking for a little more, this is the process, but yet no flexibility? Because that was a big concern on Plan Commission, was the flexibility. Was allowing the flexibility
Would
for the
like- You
development.
think there should be more flexibility?
Yes.
Okay. Well, a lot falls then on whoever's serving on the Plan Commission and who happens to be there that night.
Well, they're just one committee, it still moves up to this.
It does, but the code is there to guide and protect our downtown.
Everybody.
And to guide the people who want to do something. I don't think anyone sets out that they want to harm downtown Hudson. They might have a different vision. And so, I think, again, that's just my impression of it, Randy. And I haven't served on the Plan Commission. You have for many years.
And it goes back to us wanting to be more flexible, more friendly to developers, and then try to do it as a uniform without losing Hudson's, historic charm.
That's important, I agree.
If I can add, when you look at the existing ordinance, which you can only really sort of see by red line, you know, if you look at how, I think it was 255-17, I think it was 10, which was sort of the opening of that particular provision, and it speaks to all the building requirements. Number one is historic style, variety, and interpretations. Architectural elements shall be based upon and consistent with the architecture of the existing downtown district and the architecture of adjacent structures. My reading of what's been proposed is to say the applicant now has to demonstrate, instead of using the same type of architecture that already exists downtown or that might be existing on neighborhood as part of neighborhood developments, that the applicants are now given the ability to come in and prove that their proposed structure meets the overall intent of the district, which seems to me, and perhaps Randy can comment, but seems to be almost a more fluid and sort of global concept, so that as Mr. Carey had indicated, you know, you might look at the Valley Cartage building and say, well, that's different than what's down there, or the Lenzen building coming. It's different, but it fits within sort of the spirit of what the council is really envisions for its downtown district. So, I mean, that's my sense, is that when you talk about flexibility, it appears that there was some intent or effort to kind of clean up old language to move to a code that is a little more consistent with how the downtown has developed, and to allow the downtown to kind of continue to develop in that manner. Is that a fair reading?
Yeah. And that was a big thing with the plan commissioners asking for that and cleaning up the old rigors of the old ordinance.
Well, and how interesting that the city wants it to be a little bit more open and up to interpretation, and the developers are looking for a little bit more guardrails. I mean, it's kind of a flipped on its head a little bit. But with that, Mr. Carey's points well taken. It's not that an idea, blueprint, a specific building would have been approved in the old version and won't be approved in this version. It's more of, you just don't know which direction to head. Is that more of it? You're working more, you think with some of these changes, you're working more blindly and throwing it to the review committee or whatever body it goes to. So you're working more blind, if you will. Is that kind of how I'm reading your push on all this?
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is said respectfully, I appreciate the notion that the idea is this allows us to find more reasons to say yes. I believe in a lot of cases that's the case. It also gives you a lot more opportunities to say no, because there's more subjectivity to it. That's the biggest concern, is if you look at words like scale, balance, and proportion. Again, I give the example that it's been acknowledged that a bunch of, we have single-story homes that are in this district that are next to, look out your window, 3-story condos. Well, which is it, right? I'm just saying that I think that we hope that there's reasons to say yes to projects. But again, I think there's so much subjectivity depending upon what a person might like at the moment. Also, a lot of reasons to say no to something.
All right. Anybody else?
I don't have an issue. I'm sorry, if somebody wants to have one more meeting, I mean, but we could still,
And I think we want to get this right. As much as we want to get it done, we got to get it right.
So when we say one more meeting, what are we talking
a
about?
public hearing, and then we could call for
Another-
first reading tonight, or
another
have
public
one more
hearing?
public hearing and nail it down
Is
after
that what you want to do, a public hearing? I think there was a request for maybe a meeting or 2 to 3 meetings with the property owners of downtown.
Yes.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, but only one, not 2, 3, maybe 2.
And is that a public hearing? Like we're having right
This is a
now?
public, yeah.
Well, here's one more.
So, but, I
Okay,
mean,
Well, he's asking for
We're
a
having a
meeting
public
only
hearing.
for building owners downtown. I don't think that that would be appropriate with our open meeting laws. Is that correct, Nick?
I don't know if the intent
Well,
was with
The
just
staff,
council.
staff could meet.
It would be with staff rather
Staff
than
and
with
the
the,
mayor,
with the
perhaps.
council.
He had
Said a
option.
private meeting with the, I mean, I
Cedar.
did hear him say a private meeting with,
With the consultant and the property owners
and
is
the
what I was.
property owners. and
Okay.
I'm not sure I want the property owners deciding the overlay either.
So, but my point is that we had a public hearing. And how many people spoke?
They've sent their feedback.
Yeah. So, I mean, what good does another public hearing do? I mean, I'm, you know me, I'm always willing to listen to people. And I'm fine with that, if that's what you
I'm
want.
going to move for first reading.
Yeah, I
on
think
second reading.
that happened already.
You already did. first
Second reading?
Point of order on that, just to clarify, because this has changed, we voted on it in September, and now there's some modifications. Can we have a second reading on it now, or do we have to have another first, since it's slightly different?
No, because you're amending it along the way. You've had your first reading, which the purpose is then to amend it or modify. You know, that being said, though, I mean, depending on what you want to accomplish, you should provide staff with some direction. If you want to move it forward for consideration at a later date, that's just fine. You don't have to take action on it tonight. But if you prefer that staff meet with some of the real estate owners downtown to gather their direct feedback, you can do that. If you want to set it for another public hearing, you know, as the mayor pointed out, this is a public hearing tonight, so anybody had the opportunity to provide comment. I think it would be helpful from a staff perspective to understand what you would like to take place between now and when there is final consideration, so that staff can adequately address those actions and make sure that we have whatever hasn't been considered included as part of the consideration for the next round of discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You're directing staff to have a meeting with a workshop or effectively with the downtown property owners.
Yes, and I think that's a good opportunity for them to tell
then we
us what
could-
they're thinking, and
We can report back with the notes from that meeting and
I would encourage us to consider that as well. And I did have another point of clarification I had on this. Councilmember Morissette, I know you asked about the appeal process from the builder perspective. And I think when we talked about this the last time, we also talked about an appeal process for residents or people within a certain, square footage from the building. And I'm not seeing that in here, and I could have missed it. But I know when we talked about it, Mr. Mayor, I know you said you didn't have any issues with that being brought forward, and I sounded like there were several of us that had that same opinion. So that's a point I would like us to revisit on this as well. So two things. One, Councilmember Morissette, I agree. I think directing city staff to have a meeting with the business owners in the downtown district is the right way to go. And two, the appeal process from a residential perspective.
So, excuse me, could you, for clarification, any resident in the city could appeal?
No, what we had talked about was within a certain number of feet.
Okay, did you want to specify that now, or are you just suggesting that you want something to cover that?
I'm hoping that we can, we've talked about it already in the past, and we did encourage, I believe, Nick Vivian and Mike Johnson were maybe going to connect on a proposal of what that might look like.
All right, so is that a motion?
Yes. That is. Would you like me to word it as a formal motion?
I understand it.
She said, Becky, read it back. I can't.
Move to direct our city staff to hold a meeting with property owners, business owners in the downtown district with respect to the overlay policy ordinance, as well as addressing an appeal process for residents within a certain number of feet.
adding Cedar Corp to that.
we'll get some feedback. That'll be helpful.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any,
Mr. Mayor, just one question after that's completed. Does the council then want that information sent back to the Plan Commission for consideration, or does it want to come back here for final consideration?
Well, if we want to follow the process, it would go back to Plan Commission.
Yep, we can do that.
I would agree with that. I think I really appreciate the hard work of the Plan Commission, and they are part of the process. You're right, to go through it and discuss it. They are going to be the first line of applying this code. So I don't have objection to that. I know it does take the process longer. My one comment about that is, I know we've been told that this will become effective code for us as soon as we do approve it. And so there may, I hate to be holding up people right now that are in downtown Hudson that might be wanting to apply or start a project, but I also don't want to put something in that will only apply to one building, because then we're going to change it in a few months. So I'm glad that we're being cautious and doing this very carefully, because it's really important. Our historic district is very important.
Yeah.
And to add on to that too, if I can, Joy, I think Josh and Tiffany, our city planner, have done a lot of good, hard work on this over the past year. And, you know,
A lot of work.
it's a
lot
ton of work,
they
and
have
there's a
done,
lot
yeah.
of feedback, and there's certainly a ton of opinions and thoughts all over the place on, you know, what downtown should look like and feel like, and scale and architecture and everything like that. So I think there's a lot of good, hard work that's gone into this, and I'm happy. So thank you, Josh. I know it's.
Well, and just to be clear, a thoughtful, prolonged process does not stop anybody from submitting an application today. So if they submit an application today, they're operating under our existing code.
Right.
If they wait until this is adopted, then they're submitting it under the revised code.
Yeah,
Yep.
good clarification.
All right, anybody else? Everybody understand the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing for ordinance 3-24 to adopt chapter 252 St. Croix Scenic Riverway. You want to do the same thing, Josh?
Yeah, if I may, that'd be great. All right, well, thank you. So this is a process or an overview district that goes back to the start of Wisconsin, basically 1848, as far back as the Wisconsin Constitution. So there's some history here. It's changed over the years, but you know, we're really, this area is part of the Lower St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. And so the St. Croix River is 169 miles long, and so it goes all the way up to Lake Superior. And we only are in charge of a little bit of it for that whole way. But just include a little bit of history in there. I didn't want to get into it. I think Tiffany, I talked to Tiffany, and she said that the history has been distributed to the council. So if you want further information, we could certainly provide that. But essentially, it's the whole purpose of this is really to protect the character of the St. Croix Riverway. And both Minnesota and Wisconsin have their duties to protect that area. And these are governed in Wisconsin by NR 118. So it's the Natural Resources chapter of statute. And so there's limitations to what the city can do. In the current code in the city of Hudson, there's more of a references to that. And that usually gets you by on a lot of state statutes. You can reference it and you're good. But for whatever.
I want to interrupt a second, Josh. I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
So, where did the recommendation for 118 come from?
I don't know off the top of my head.
So that's what we're looking for, and I'm not sure if you were the one that was supposed to come in and give us the history.
That was Bob.
I know we had asked Bob, but I didn't know if you were going to be covering that part of it or not.
That part, no, I apologize. We put together the summary, and I don't have it memorized, but if you know, if that's a specific question, I can certainly ask.
I want to know where it came from. I've been told that it came from the Minnesota-Wisconsin Boundary Commission, or Mississippi St. Croix Boundary Commission. No, Minnesota-Wisconsin Boundary Commission, I think is what it was. And so I don't know if that's true or not. And clearly, NR 118 is a carve-out for just a portion of Lower St. Croix. And interestingly, if in fact it came from that commission, doesn't seem to apply to Minnesota. Just applies to Wisconsin, just to that carve-out in Wisconsin. That, from my understanding, is between Osceola and halfway through Prescott. So why not all of Prescott? Got a question about that. And why just between Osceola and Prescott? And again, why does it apply just to us if it's a recommendation coming from the Boundary Commission? They're imposing on us some type of statute like this that they're not interested in having in Minnesota as well. So that's what I'm wondering about. I'm curious where this came from, who is involved, where the proposal came from for this, why the carve-out for just a portion of the St. Croix River, and why just Wisconsin?
Yeah, and I can't answer most of those questions. I think we've found out a little bit of the history as to the timing and what happened, but I don't know the reasoning behind it. In this case, in this slide, it talks about 27 miles is administered by the National Park Service. So the 27 miles north of Osceola is administered by the National Park Service, and then the rest to the south between Osceola and Prescott is administered by NR 118. I don't know the Minnesota rules, but I believe they have some in place to protect the St. Croix River. I just don't know if they mirror NR 118.
Right.
And Prescott, I believe, only halfway through Prescott, because once the Mississippi comes into place, then it's the Mississippi River.
Well, I understand that, but if it came from the Boundary Commission, it includes the Mississippi River, and they have authority over that as well. So anyway, I'm just curious where all of this, the genesis of this, and in particular, especially if it came from the Boundary Commission, why it's only applying to Wisconsin and not Minnesota in the same way. I know that they have their rules over there as well that are implemented by the legislature and enforced by their DNR, I presume. But it's just, I've been looking for this information for a while, and I think it's important. I mean, this affects, when you think about this, the only city it affects is us with this carve-out. We're the only city this affects, half of Prescott. And so I'm wondering why.
Osceola.
Well, Osceola is,
They've had some challenges with it recently.
yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm wondering. Sorry to interrupt.
No, fair question. And yeah, I know Bob was providing some information. I guess I didn't know we didn't quite hit the mark on that, so I apologize, but we can keep digging if you're interested as to the reasoning behind it. And I don't know that we'll find a perfectly good answer, but we can keep searching. We've got a lot of the information from the DNR folks.
Okay.
But so back to the topic at hand. Really, we're limited, and it is a limitation. Limited by the NR 118. We can't. The city of Hudson can't be less restrictive than what NR 118 is, but it can be more restrictive. And what is currently in the code right now is more references to those statutes. And when you're going to change your code, the DNR looked at it and said, you know what, you really need to have it all codified as NR 118, basically adopting NR 118 into your code. So there's not really a whole lot of latitude to do that, especially because you're updating it now. So we basically are looking at the whole NR 118, bringing it in to chapter 252, an overlay district, and incorporating essentially the entire NR 118. So it really applies to this map area that we see here. And there's two different zones in the district. The one is a river town, and that really is the city of Hudson as it was on June 1st, 2004. And then rural residential is the area that's been annexed into the city since 2004. So, and you have rural residential that's on the south piece, and as future annexations take place in that district, that would be included into the rural residential category, just because the limits are already defined by statute. That is the Rivertown district. So the permitted uses are defined in statute as single-family, conservancy, forestry, agricultural, public parks, filling and grading. And then under the permitted uses, you're allowed to, those permitted uses as described in Chapter 255 of the zoning code. So you can incorporate those just by reference. You don't have to relist all of them. And that's what we've done, is reference the permitted uses in 255. So that would be any underlying zoning district that's in the Riverway area that has permitted uses in those districts would be allowed by this provision. That includes permitted structures are the same, but it includes single-family, piers, signs, erosion control. But that also includes permitted uses and structures are allowed as identified in Chapter 255, provided that they protect the natural and scenic qualities of the lower St. Croix Riverway, protect public health and safety, and prevent erosion and water pollution. So those are the caveats that if you can allow those uses, provided those three criteria are essentially met. The conditional uses are specifically listed in the statutes as well. And those are, land divisions, cluster developments, transmission services, wireless communication services, erosion control, stairways and lifts, public roads, bed and breakfast operations, home occupations, and nature-oriented education nonprofit facilities. In the statutes, it also basically says if you're going to include conditional uses in this provision, that has to be listed into this Riverway section, and it has to describe what conditions are, what criteria is allowed in that section. So your Riverway ordinance basically spells it, it's your zoning district for conditional uses and for the overlay in this area. So general provisions, it covers the lot size and density, the maximum height structure, height is 45 feet. It identifies some color standards, science standards, and so on. So these are dimensional standards that are included in statute. Like I said, we could be more restrictive, but basically adopting it by as to what's in there right now. And I touched on the conditional use standards as what's in there. Non-conforming uses and structures, so it does allow some provisions of existing non-conforming uses, structures, and substandard lots. This is common. Like I said, the rest of your zoning code also has this as it pertains to the rest of the properties in the district or in the city. And these provide a little bit more flexibility in some cases. Basically, if you're you can't make something more non-conforming, or you increase the non-conformity, but you can increase the intensity and density, provided the same footprint is met. So it does give a little bit of flexibility in that regard, but for the most part, it's going to follow your non-conforming language in your zoning code. Administration and procedures. So the adoption of the ordinance, looking at the conditional uses, variances, and zoning map requirements, and what can be permitted. You have to provide reasonable accommodations for disabled persons. It also outlines the appeals and penalty provisions. So this is kind of how the district works, essentially. You've got the underlying zoning district, which is your base conventional zoning. That still stands. That's what's going to determine what your permitted uses are. The overlay district, we've talked about the design overlay district, that'll still apply to new construction and new development. And then NR 118 is essentially west of that blue line. So it covers, going through the heart of downtown, I think it's 2nd Street, and then west of that towards the river. And then as you get further to the south, it kind of bows out to the east a little bit. But that boundary has been set by statute. Really not a lot of flexibility in that regard. So that's what I have for you for tonight. We can continue to dig into the history a little bit more, but kind of limited on what we can do. I think the other flexibility that we could add that we haven't is the conditional use part of it, that we would have to go through and list all the specific conditional uses that would be allowed in that district, and then list the criteria in which they would be applicable. So we basically took the statutes, but we could certainly add more if needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. So, public hearing for ordinance 3-24 to adopt chapter 252. Did I announce that already? Or? No.
We gotta do the public.
Yeah. St. Croix Scenic Riverway. All right, so this is a public hearing. Once again, it's your opportunity to comment on the topic before us. If you do have a comment, please come to the podium, identify yourself and your address, and try to keep your comments brief. Please try not to repeat other people's comments. How are we doing on Zoom?
There's one on here.
Still one? Okay. Does anybody have a comment?
It's a new one, so they might not know how to raise their hand. Tell them to-
Oh, yeah, that's right. So this is a new second public hearing here. So if you do have a comment and you're on Zoom, please raise your hand electronically and we'll get to you. Once again, does anybody have a comment? Any comment? Any comment? Any comment? Nothing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing is closed. Ordinance 3-24 to adopt Chapter 252 St. Croix Scenic Riverway.
Well, Mr. Mayor, on your comments, wondering where this derived from and kind of hearing that, well, the DNR says that's the way it is. If I'm reading you correctly, we want to know what's behind that, and
that's not going to, I don't want to confuse the issue here, okay? Because I don't think the history is going to change what we essentially need to do here
Right.
tonight.
Our reality.
And that's to take whole cloth, what is in 118, and put it into our zoning code.
Right.
And but I still absolutely, I want to know where this came from. You know, we're adhering to this, and somebody back when knew the reasoning behind it.
right.
Sure, it was thoughtful. I just would like to know. I think it'd be good for all of us to know and have on record here. So anyway,
Move to suspend the rules.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Roll call?
Morissette,
Yes.
Wakefield,
Yes.
Knutson,
No,
Kennedy,
Yes.
Bruck,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance 3-24.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to adopt. Discussion?
And to clarify, we really are hand tied on this.
Yeah.
We don't have
Right.
Have any?
an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to clarify my no vote, is that I think we change ordinances in one meeting, and that's not the intent. Suspending the rules should be sort of for an emergency situation. Maybe we consider this. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. We've been given a direction that we have to adopt this, or we need to follow it, and so we've taken the decision, rather than just referring to it in our code, we're going to adopt the whole thing, whole cloth, into our code. So I don't object to that, but I do object to just the idea that every time we do an ordinance, we just want to do it in one meeting instead of reading it and coming back the next meeting. So that was the reason for it, that I voted no to suspend the rules.
Okay, thank you. Josh, you had a comment?
Yeah, if I may, I forgot to mention one thing, and I don't know if it's critical, but one of the parts of this was to have the DNR review, which we did review with the DNR throughout this process, so they're familiar with what we're doing. But we were asking for a written approval of this beforehand, and we have not received that yet. So I don't know if I don't know if Tiffany talked to you about that, Mike, but I at least wanted to bring that up because we were waiting for something written. We had asked for it weeks ago, still waiting on
Of
it. For the ordinance as presented.
as approval of
They will need to sign off on approval or.
Yeah, so amendments to the code, where the DNR has jurisdiction under NR 118, requires DNR approval before effectiveness.
Sounds like a Monty Python.
So,
And we know they don't do that.
well, they're going to have to, and we've asked them in advance. We've told them when our meeting would be, and so, presumably your motion can proceed. But in addition to publication, we require DNR approval of this ordinance before it can become effective.
So should I amend my motion to
Contingent?
approve it?
Contingent upon.
Contingent on DNR approval? Or
No.
should I just withdraw my motion?
No, you can leave your motion is fine. Just, know that the ordinance isn't going to become effective until the DNR approves it. And if they don't, if they come back with comments that require revisions, they shouldn't, because we're adopting everything in the ordinance, but stranger things have happened, I suppose. If they do come back with some comments, then this will be back before you.
I'll choose to amend my motion to make it contingent on DNR approval, so that way we've crossed our Ts and dotted our Is.
Sarah, you good with that?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion second before us. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for
The
bringing
Hudson
that up.
DNR City Council, or what?
Yes, thanks, Josh.
All right, consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from the March 4th, 2024 special and regular council meeting. Approve claims in the amount of $9,901,684.83. Approve Booster Days 2024. Approve Lions Hometown Music Fest 2024. Approve the certificate of compliance for 210 Locust Street, Hudco To Go, and Wilder Waffle Company. Approve certified survey map, the extraterritorial zone, town of Troy, at 422-428 County Road F, Seasons 45 LLC. Approve conditional use permit application at 1601 Industrial Street on Bogey Box, Hudson. Approve conditional use permit application at 727 12th Street, Hannah Bakken and Brett Bakken. Approve conditional use permit application for 2328 Jack Brault Drive, Midwest Health and Fitness. Approve the bid from Market & Johnson in the amount of $199,998 for the construction of Williams Park restroom and reallocate $45,000 from 2024 Prospect Park Playground replacement funds. Approve NOMO May 2024.
Would you please pull that from the agenda? From consent?
And lastly, approve contract for city civil legal service Eckberg Lammers.
And I'd like to pull that also, please. That wasn't approved by finance, so still needs to be discussed.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items K and L. All right?
Yep.
Yep. Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield? Yes. Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
All right, motion's approved. Consent agenda is approved with the two exceptions. Item K.
Thank you. Well, I have talked about the No Mow May project in the past, and I am very supportive of pollination, supporting our pollinators with appropriate plantings, etc. I find that No Mow May is not really appropriate to our city or to our USDA growing zone, our latitude, upper Midwest, whoever you want to term it. Partly because this is a very exceptional year. Last year, we had snow in April and frozen ground in May. I don't think the ground is barely frozen this winter at this point. So every year can be a little bit different. But the point is No Mow May was initially started in the UK, where they have a completely different cycle of growing. They have flowers blooming now in February and certainly in March. And so it's not really designed. I would like to see, the reason I object to it is it's not enough. Some people might say, oh, it's a foot forward, let's do something, but it's easy then to say, oh, well, we did something, No Mow May. But actually what would be much more helpful to our pollinators is to have some local group do some education or encouragement about what could be planted that would encourage them year-round. The study that was done out of a university in Wisconsin has been retracted now, where they claimed that they saw more bees after one summer of not mowing in May. That's been retracted. The University of Minnesota is certainly engaged in discussion. It's been a popular press item. And so I don't want anyone to take it wrong that I'm against fostering our pollinators. And last year, last couple of years, in June, I've had like 12 different flowers blooming, May and June, in my garden. I enjoy planting things. I have many perennials. The University of Minnesota is also developing a type of turf that's bee-friendly. It's called the bee lawn. There's a faculty member of this University of Minnesota Extension Services that has written some comments about no mow May that actually isn't that helpful to your turf. And that's one thing I think we have to be honest with ourselves. Most of the residents in Hudson do have turf. They have a grass growing. And my concern in May is primarily what might grow or bloom would be dandelions, and some of our neighbors may not care for them, and by a dandelion going to seed in the neighborhood might lead to another neighbor to use more chemicals in their lawn. So unintended consequences of actually more chemicals being used, because again, I just don't think it fits our climate. So that's why I wanted to speak out about it. I really I keep wishing for some organization, the Rotary Club members came forward, and certainly one of the members that was present has had a lot of experience with bees and has really helped foster that in our community. And so I would just like to encourage anyone that would like to come forward. I don't think it needs to be a city initiative. I do think just helping people to learn, what can I plant in my lawn? Look, if I wanted to convert my grass lawn from a monoculture to a more bee-friendly turf, what would I do? And so there are some resources for that, and I just think that would be more effective, because really this proclamation, which is kind of a mix of a proclamation and a resolution, the way it's written, is just asking us to suspend our ordinance. And frankly, I don't think there's been a ticket written for no mowing in May, because the lawn has to get tall enough, and then there has to be a complaint filed. It usually goes to Hudson Police Department, because we have delegated enforcement of those nuisance issues to the police department, and then a whole process takes place, and we're probably into July before any complaints about May would action be taken. So that's my point on that. And again, I only bring it up tonight. I know it may seem that I'm being critical of the people that have come forward, but actually I'm hoping to encourage something more in our community. So that is all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Okay. Did we have a motion on it? We don't have a motion yet. Is there a motion?
Nope.
Move to approve.
Second that?
A motion and second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
All those opposed?
Sorry. Rushing the meeting.
All right, motion's approved. Item L, approved contract for city civil legal services.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion.
Well, I'll briefly reiterate some of my comments from finance, in which I was pointing out that the city does have prescribed a procedure for purchasing. There's some alliteration for you. It's on the finance page. Purchasing, it does include verbiage that describes contractual services, which I believe hiring an attorney to represent the city would constitute a contractual service. So there's a whole matrix that helps the city staff, because many times this is sort of thing is being done by department heads as they're getting supplies or perhaps getting a bid for a project. We certainly see a lot of it coming through Public Works Department, because that's the nature of a lot of their work, is that there are proposals. So I feel that this is a very significant expense for the city. I believe in typical years it's been $120,000 or more. And I am not comfortable with just signing a contract for another 5 years of that. I do feel on principle that we should bid it out, that we should see if anyone else is interested. And I understand after our longtime city attorney retired, there was a request or some sort of advertisement that this position is open. We're interested in people that would like to serve the city, and that we only got one applicant. And so I feel that it would be appropriate to look again. I also regretfully had to bring forward some points that have been on my mind for quite a long time that I have not had any redress for, which I have asked for. I will just read the state ordinance right now, Wisconsin Statute 19.89, exclusion of members. No duly elected or appointed member of a governmental body may be excluded from any meeting of such body. So That is clearly stating the issue that I mentioned last summer, where you were advised that you were allowed to exclude me, that you might need to vote for me to stay out of the meeting because it was a bargaining situation. And it was determined by our city attorney that I might have a conflict of interest. And I received an email on the Thursday, maybe it was Wednesday night, Thursday prior to the Monday meeting. Council was going into closed session to discuss the potential purchase of a lot in St. Croix Business Park. I received an advisory email from the city attorney saying, boy, you might have a conflict of interest. I would advise you to recuse yourself. And I answered back, thank you for your input. I will consider it. And then on Friday, I understand in retrospect that the city attorney provided all 5 of you information about that negotiations and did not provide it to me. So single-handedly decided to exclude me, not an elected official. The attorney's job is to advise and give us guardrails, not to insert into policy. And I just see that pattern happening repeatedly. So I got a further email on Monday afternoon before council was to have closed session on that Monday night. This is back in June last year. And at that time, the city attorney basically told me that the council can vote to exclude me. That is in an email. I have shared all that with you. Last October 17th, you received a PDF that I prepared with a whole compilation of those. And I never got any comment, support. Mayor, I brought it to you, I met with you and former city administrator Aaron Reeves and said what I would like to have. I would like to have a discussion. I would like to have the attorney acknowledge that this was incorrect advice. Mr. Morris said, it is not that I am personally offended. I don't need an apology. What I need is appropriate guidance for the future. This is not something that we want to happen in our community, that we get a group of elected officials get the idea that they can keep one person out, that you can vote to exclude someone, that you can determine whether they're allowed to participate. Again, the burden falls on the elected official or the appointed official. There's probably plan commission members that should recuse on certain occasions, or other committees perhaps. But in this case, if I had planned to over the weekend, as I told the city attorney on Thursday, I will give it a great deal of thought. And I did, and over the weekend, I decided that I didn't want to put anyone on the council in an uncomfortable position. And yes, I do not discuss matters with the St. Croix Business Park with my husband, but he does serve on that board. There is absolutely no compensation. There has been completely voluntary service for many years. All 3 of the board members serve just out of love and support for Hudson, helping Hudson to grow and develop. So I made the decision that I would recuse. And so I was quite angry then. I thought about that over the weekend, and then when I received that information that the city attorney said that you could vote to exclude me, I was not only concerned for myself, not offended for myself, concerned for all of you, that those tables could be turned on you as well. So this is one of the reasons, again, I asked repeatedly for this to be discussed in closed session or to have some sort of handling so that, and I wrote numerous emails to Aaron Reeves, and as I said, I sought personal counsel on my own expense with someone who's very experienced in municipal law and got guidance and had multiple suggestions to, under this clause, I could, afford privacy to Mr. Vivian, et cetera, and it was refused and refused and refused. So I chose not to bring it into open session at that time, but now I am, because I do think that we should have an opportunity to see if there is someone else who would be willing to serve the city of Hudson and entertain both what they have to offer and also the bidding process. It is a significant expense, at least $100,000 a year for 5 years. To just rubber stamp that, I do not think is fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. All right, so I have a question. The ordinance that Joy has cited, saying that we have to take any service contract, not any service contract, but what was it again?
Well, it's just on here's the matrix, And if you go to the finance page on the city website, it's a purchasing policy, basically. Here it is. You can read it there if you'd like, sir. That came printed off the website. And then this is the matrix.
So, I mean, I don't want to be violating our ordinance, all right? I don't want to be voting to violate our ordinance, but I don't know if this would. And I don't know if you can comment on this.
Well, it's not in, my understanding, and I don't know what's been cited because I haven't seen it, right? So, but if it is your purchasing policy, it's a policy of the city. You have many policies and you decide how to apply those policies. It's not written in ordinance. So, you know, ultimately it's your discretion. My understanding previously is that you had, prior to me, you had a long history of extending your city attorney as you've wanted to, right? And that continuity of the attorney-client relationship, if you find it to be important, you're not required to put the contract out to bid if you don't want to. So from that perspective, your history is not to put it out to bid. If you want to put it out to bid, you certainly can at any point. If you want to terminate the contract, you certainly can at any point. So it's not as though you're locked into a long-term agreement, nor are you locked into a $500,000 contract when you have a 120-day termination provision. Nor is the contract worth $120,000 when you look at all the various dollars that flow through and the various legal counsel that the city uses in addition to us and your employment counsel and your municipal prosecutor. There is more than just us acting as counsel on behalf of the city of Hudson. How that breaks down in your budget is probably dependent on the way you look at your budget. So that being said, I mean, certainly you have the broad authority to go out and solicit RFPs if you'd like to. You also have the authority to say, you know, in 4 months, we're going to move on and utilize somebody different. So from that perspective, if you decide to extend the contract, I think you have the right to do that, consistent with past practices and depending on how you read that policy. If you prefer to go out for RFP, you can certainly do that as well.
We could ask for another attorney to get an opinion also. That might be the right thing.
Yeah, we could, but, and where does custom and usage come into play here? Is that the right terminology? I mean, it applies to what you're talking about. I know that, isn't that what it's called, custom and usage? That might be contrary to what policy is, might even be contrary to what ordinances are, but it's been practiced for ever, right? And I know that at least on one occasion, maybe more than one, Joyce and Randy, you were here longer than me, but I remember at least once where Kathy McKittrick's contract was up, and we did not, and we debated it, but we did not take it out to RFP, and that may have happened more than once.
I don't recall sending it out for RFP. I remember her coming in and...
No, we did not.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
what
no,
I'm
I don't
saying.
recall sending anything out for RFP. I do remember she came in and said she had to raise her rates, and I think that we just accepted her rates.
I could tell you what custom and usage is, which may be germane or not. Custom and such usage, which has by long and uniform practice become the law of that to which it relates. So if practice history has it, we're okay. We're not violating anything.
Well, how would one terminate a contract when a city council member comes to the mayor and the city administrator and gets no opportunity to discuss it, requested repeatedly in closed session for the benefit of privacy? That's something that I might say would harm someone's reputation. I asked for that in writing repeatedly. You were copied on those emails. How would a person then, we've had the reassurance that in 120 days you could change it. This is my problem. That's my problem with it. I have tried.
If I may, where I do agree with Councilmember Knutson is I do think it is always best practice to do an RFP. I don't share some of the concerns that you have mentioned. I do think that is the right thing from a stewardship perspective, just to put it out there and open it up. And I know I've advocated for that on Public Works at different times, and so that is why I would think it would be the right thing to do. The other concerns that have been mentioned, I don't necessarily share those, but I do hold true and committed to being good stewards to taxpayer dollars, and a part of that process is putting things up for bid.
And I don't disagree with that. When I think of putting things out to bid, though, I think of yards of concrete, Class 5 rock, things that are definable. It is what it is, so everyone's bidding, and you usually go to the lowest bidder, the person can get it to you fastest. With these types of services, though, I don't want to boil it down to we're going to go to the lowest bid. If we'd save $5 an hour, that's not someone I want to go with. Some of the history that we have and the knowledge that we've created, my fear, and I'm very sensitive, Joy, to what you're saying, and know some of the stuff over the months. I don't want to construe the two together. It's almost like we're taking this and putting it into one big ball. I think they have to be separated. Like you mentioned, we could continue with this contract knowing that there's an out, and that doesn't exclude you from continuing your concern and trying to solve for that.
By what avenue?
Pardon me?
By what avenue?
That I can't answer for you.
Well, I never felt your support, but thank you for verbalizing it tonight.
You're welcome. I think that the RFP, which again creates a lot of work to find if there's another attorney in town that might be interested. Now that we've exposed what we're talking about, any attorney could come and say, I'm $5 cheaper than you guys. So now we have more people in the pot. But I don't think it solves what you're going through. And it doesn't have to, again, I don't think it all has to all be tied into one big package. I think we do two different things here. So.
Anybody else? All right, we've got a motion, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion's approved. 2023 Hudson Fire Department Annual Report. Chief, good to see you. You know, I just have to say
Oh, boy.
that when our former chief was here and he had something to say, he wore his dress whites when he came.
You know, I thought about that after I got here. But I will guarantee you I will have
We
it on
knew there
tomorrow.
was going to be an ask whenever he came up with. All right, good to have you here.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Council. This is for informational purposes only. I just wanted to get this report out to the group to basically just give a recap of 2023 and everything that we've accomplished and everything that's gone on with our department. As you'll see throughout the report, we've exponentially increased our call volume, and I can't point one item in particular that's caused that. It's been a culmination of a lot of things that has increased our call volume. I think the big thing is that we're a popular community, and there's a lot of people in the community. There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of people in town all the time, and that just drives the demand for services. It's no different than what police is experiencing in EMS. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions you have on the report. I know I had mentioned in the opening, and I believe as part of the issue sheet coming tonight, I think the big thing in the future that we're going to have to talk about, more so in the near future, is performing some form of a study on the fire department, a staffing study. I don't think with our exponential
call volume going on and all the activities that are expected of us, that we can continue to operate under the staffing model that we're working with. I think there's going to become burnout with staff, and I think it's going to be harder and harder to keep staff. A good example is if we experience several calls within a short period of time, we get a bunch of people to start, and by the time we get to that last call, it starts to go down because you're taking away from family time, you're taking away, their time away from the fire department also. This is a part-time job for them. It's a volunteer paid on-call position, and it weighs heavy on the families from being taken away. So, at 618 calls a year, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're paid on-call volunteer, that's a lot to expect your people to come in for. So I think I highly suggest we entertain the discussion and look at potentially doing a staffing study going forward to see where we need to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to get that roadmap put together as the community continues to grow. We're not going to get smaller, and that's everybody. And that would be a joint effort with all our fire partners. I mean, everybody would pay in their portion to have that done, but it's definitely something that I think needs to be done to get a roadmap going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments? That was easy.
Well, I guess.
The report was so pretty, we oohed and ahed at the
Yes,
safety
it's in
committee.
color.
Questioning his ink budget, yes, yeah.
You didn't print it.
Thanks, Chief.
Electronic.
Discussion and possible action on traffic safety policy.
And this has been a good thing coming
Yes.
between Public Works, Public Safety, working on this. So, and Aaron has presented now with some good stuff, and hopefully you guys will be excited about this. Get it off her table.
Yeah, so Aaron McPhee-Anderson, city engineer. This has been presented and kind of gone with a few iterations. And so I think twice to public safety and twice to public works. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to review, I guess, the final draft. And I wasn't thinking I would go over it in detail unless you guys think I need to. Again.
I think we've all seen it a few times.
Yeah. And then I did email the online map that I have been working with Nick, our GIS coordinator internally, to hopefully be a platform to submit applications. We would still have a paper copy available for people that don't want to use the mapping, or aren't tech savvy. So any questions or comments?
I just want to thank you. I know this has been a tremendous job, and taking the input from Public Works, Public Safety, community, the fact that it's online and paper, it's just fantastic. It's going to be consistent across the board so that we can address issues consistently. I think it's terrific.
I too am really appreciative. I'm going to make the motion to approve it, but with one paragraph removed, the paragraph saying the city of Hudson will not install speed bumps or humps due to their negative impacts. I would like to remove that paragraph. And the reason for that is I do think that speed humps do work, and I think that it should be something that should be an option. I'm not advocating for them to be all over the city, but I think that they should be an option.
Does a seconder?
Pardon me?
Does a
Well,
second, or did you get a second?
It's a motion.
I made the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
With the speed bumps?
No, I think
Well,
we can use it as a day by day, but yes.
She changed it. They took out, the wording says no
Yeah.
speed bumps, Joyce wants it in. So is that what you're seconding?
Yeah. I think that we need as much in the toolbox as possible.
Okay.
Thank you, Randy.
All right, so everybody understand the motion and discussion?
It's what's written, but now we're going to include speed humps.
No,
as-
we're removing one paragraph that says speed humps are not going to be part of the toolbox. I'm saying that they should be part of the toolbox. So if you look at the top of okay, so it's page 186 of the packet. It's the second paragraph under traffic calming toolbox. I'm saying remove that paragraph that says the city of Hudson will not install speed humps. I want us to be able to use speed humps if necessary, because they do work.
They really impede in some of the first responders and things like that, correct? That's why that was,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I guess, controversy on them.
I mean, snow removal,
They have to be removed.
first responders, yeah.
I am categorically opposed to the speed humps, so I'll just put that out there. Mr. Morales, Public Works Director, why don't you give us a comment, please?
I can just give a brief history on it. Obviously, it is controversial just because of some of the impediments, snow plowing in our climate, so on and so forth. I can understand where Joyce is coming from. We want to put everything in there as possible. What I would say is if we do include these in this traffic calming policy, that it would almost be as a last resort. We would try to exhaust all other options that we have in front of us. There obviously are, positives to installing them. They do reduce traffic. I just don't want to install them on, so let's just take, for example, 11th Street. Let's put speed humps on 11th Street, all right? So now everybody that doesn't want to drive on speed humps are going over to Grandview Drive and racing through South Point, and then we're putting speed humps on Grandview Drive, and then we're going over to Cooley. So I just want us to use common sense when we're going through this process. We'll, like I said, exhaust all our options that we have in front of us before we start putting speed humps all over the town, because like you, I don't want speed humps and speed bumps all over
But
the
if
place
it
either.
wasn't in the toolbox per se, it's not saying it couldn't ever happen.
Yeah.
I just don't want people to think that's part of a toolbox that, well, I want this.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Well, there's a committee now, which will be recommending what
Yes,
comes
making
out
the
of that, too.
recommendations.
So where did this come from?
But
You're taking that paragraph out, where'd that come from?
I looked at it and said, I want to have speed humps to be available.
I think it was, no, I
Yeah, a staff
understand that,
rec-
but
a
I mean,
staff
as far as what we were
recommendation.
presented with, where'd that come from?
A staff recommendation.
Right.
And was that approved by the committees?
Yes, the Public Works Committee did approve it, and we have had great discussions about it with some information from both the Public Works Director and the city engineer. And, it requires drilling holes in the pavement every year, spring and fall, in order to install those. They are not able to be up in the winter months, of course, because of the snow plows. And so I just am concerned about harm to the pavement. The more holes, cracks, and crevices we have in our pavement, the more the freeze-thaw cycle can set in and really damage and break down our streets. And that we have a list of streets that need work already without further deterioration. So I just don't think they're helpful. I think people drive erratically to try to avoid them. And so I don't find them useful, and I do agree that if it's listed in the policy, there might be folks that say, well, that's what I want in my neighborhood. I want a stop sign, or I want this.
And we had talked too that the concern was when you have those, it actually can increase the speed because you roar up to brake, to go over, to roar off. So I know that was one of the concerns we talked about at public safety.
So is everything grandfathered in the city then? And Aaron, what's your absolute opinion? Not to put you on the spot, and Mike, what's your absolute opinion, yes or no? You guys are the ones dealing with them.
Right, yeah, no, the cost to install them, staff time, the impacts on snow plowing, I'm more of the ilk where I would like to see the other options be used first.
And I agree with Mike that, yes, they aren't your first resort. But I think, Joy, there's a difference between the temporary speed humps and then
Permanent
when you
asphalt.
have when you redo a road and you install a speed hump there, it's very different from the temporary speed humps.
So you're talking about allowing for permanent speed bumps?
If that's what is the best solution, yes.
Well, then, no, I will withdraw my second.
Oh, you don't,
No, I don't want a permanent.
you
I
don't,
think we need to talk to police and fire and EMS as well, because while it may, in a certain instance, work, it could be a public safety issue for our first responders.
But it's working in your
in my
situation.
neighborhood. And, you know, and so that would be a place where, when the road is redone, would it be appropriate for us to put in a permanent speed hump?
But you still got the same issue with the public.
Well, actually, if you put in the, if the speed humps are designed correctly, then they shouldn't be a problem with the plows, because they should be able to just go right over the speed humps.
I was thinking about the ambulances and
But
fire trucks.
it would slow down ambulances and fire trucks, but you know, they're not gonna be scattered everywhere in the city. They're going to be on, you know, just residential streets that are not collectors, things like that.
But even if it's not in the toolbox, it's not saying that someday down the road, it could be
Right.
like an exception. I just worry about putting things in a toolbox that people say, well, I don't like how the painting a crosswalk, where that didn't work, so then I want you to go to that they'll eventually get that. That's my worry. I guess I'm
I
not
agree
saying-
with that, because we did talk about that, same with stop signs, those aren't normally used as a speed control device.
Correct.
You know, there is some background to that, it's not just, I don't personally like them. And I'm, again, with the toolbox, it feels good, let's throw it in there, but we know that staff is gonna run away from that and say, there's gotta be other things. And in the future, if strobe lights, water cannons, something crazy gets invented, we'll bring that into our toolbox if it's proven that that can reduce speed and create safety or whatever. But right now, I think there's been so much baggage with speed bump baggage, that, you know, again, if we put it in there just so that everyone feels good about it, that it's in there, and staff's never gonna push for having it, it's sort of pointless to me.
I agree.
All right, so Randy,
What's wrong?
okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion.
Move to approve as written.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve plans and authorize advertisement for bids for the 2024 street improvement project.
So this one is mine as well. So this is to approve the plans for Vine Street and Green Street to go out for bid. So that's what you guys would be approving here.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm recusing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, opposed? Motion is approved. Discussion and possible action on assessment policy updates.
So this one's mine as well. I have routed this through Public Works, who has approved this version of the edits, and I included a red line version of our full assessment policy with the edits. This kind of came about just going through this year's projects. There's a lot of nuances. Our assessment policy is thorough, but I feel like there's also a lot of room for interpretation, so I felt like some clarity would make sense, mostly related to how alleys are assessed. So that's the section that has the most edits. There are two other sections that add a little more clarity to corner lots and double frontage lots as well. I still, you know, the assessment policy, the council is still able to vary from what it says. This is to guide us in making decisions, but there is a sentence kind of at the front that, you know, every situation is unique, and the council does have the right to say one project gets a grant and you decide not to do assessments on that project. That is able to happen.
So is this the kind of, the conversation we had, Aaron, with, in regards to projects for assessments on individuals who have just completed certain projects, which include the apron and the curb and gutter that they have replaced? And how's the process for someone gonna come and, because that's ridiculous if they built their apron or their driveway and we come back, not even 3 months old, and tell them, we're ripping it out and we're charging you for example, 5
Yeah.
grand.
Yeah, that doesn't cover, any of my revisions don't really cover that scenario. And so that is still in our policy, as driveways are 100% the responsibility of the homeowner. We don't have anything in here about, newly replaced driveways. I would hope that if people, I don't know, I guess if they technically have to have a breaking permit to redo their driveway, they probably should. Most people probably don't.
I have 2 people, God
Yep.
bless them, on Green Street that
Yep.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
have just
So-
replaced their apron and part of their driveway.
Street,
And
Randy.
I don't think it's fair for us to come in and break it up and tell them they have to pay again.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a separate issue that we could have conversations on during the public hearing. I would encourage them to come to the public hearing, and that's where the council can say, you know what, we don't think that's fair. We will, your guys' apron won't be assessed. So you guys do have the ability to make that decision. Yeah.
Is that something that we need to look at in the future here?
I
Or is
think.
it just standing practice once again?
Yeah, it's just standing practice. I would hope, if people are doing a breaking permit, this is the same with landscaping in the right of way. A lot of people plant things that they don't realize aren't on their property, and then we come in with a project and they're, upset that we're taking something out. So, if they come to us with a breaking permit, we would at least have the knowledge to say, hey, hopefully we know within the next 5 years, this is gonna be reconstructed, maybe hold off and wait till it's over. This project I know came about a little last minute, so that was harder probably to say
On
on
Green Street.
staff side, but, or hopefully,
We tried to stretch it as long as we could.
yeah,
All yours, Randy.
so, yeah.
That's a good point, Randy, but we have to figure out, that's a slippery slope, because
I know.
someone just put a new driveway in, mine's 3 years old, hers is 7 years old. At some point, they have to be assessed for something. But I think what you're saying is that it allows for special treatment of special projects like that.
Yes. And that's why we have, with the Wisconsin state statute, we have to have a public hearing for each assessment. And so that is the opportunity for homeowners to come and kind of plead their case to you guys.
So can you leave those brand-new driveways in place?
Well, not if we're changing the grade. So, there might be, we could look at doing things. Basically, then, we also assess for 50% curb and gutter. If we were gonna try to leave it in place, we would have to pay as hand curb and gutter because they wouldn't be able to go through with their curb machine, and usually we get charged double for that. So, it's kinda like,
Yeah.
it would maybe come out to be a little less, but in the end, it's
I don't think it's carbon
better
gutter, it's
to
2
like
aprons,
tie
I
them
know. for
together,
sure.
but.
So this is not where we address something like that. It's not in
We
this
have to,
policy.
we have to have a standardized policy, and yes, people have the right to come at a public hearing and voice their concerns. What a future council might do about that, I don't think we can control, but we can't write a policy for every variable. I think that's what you've been trying to do,
Yeah,
is
there's a lot
streamline
of
it.
unique
You're right.
situations.
Yeah, and every
So,
big
yeah.
project you have, you're gonna have something that's super unique. I mean, I can't think of one that we've had that's been a big project that there hasn't been something like we couldn't have
Yeah.
even thought this was gonna happen.
Quirky.
And then it did, so.
Okay, so the question I ask is this where we address that issue? You're saying,
Not with these revisions. I would say if that's something you guys want to open up and discuss, maybe for, you
Future.
can see by the first page that there's been a lot of revisions to this. So it's not like we couldn't come back again and revise another section.
okay.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move we accept it as written.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the construction manager at Risk Services RFP and authorize staff to solicit proposals for the renovation of 2101 O'Neill Road.
So I'll take the next two on the agenda. So this is basically just directing staff to solicit the RFP to construction management firms to help us through the process of both the new public works facility and new police department facility. Each in the schedule, it does say that proposals are due by April 5th. Both the Public Works Committee and Public Safety Committee will have a chance to review those proposals as they come in. We are doing it separate, just so that it's easier for finance to track. There may be a chance that one company gets both projects, or might be different companies based upon what the proposals come back at, but this is just authorizing staff to issue the RFP. I use the same verbiage as the one at the Hanley and O'Neill site, just updated some of the background information and schedule.
Mike, we did discuss this a year ago when we were beginning on Public Works Committee, because we were hoping to start on a facility then. And so we talked at some degree of depth about the construction manager at risk and what that means. And just for the general public, could you explain that a little bit?
Yep, so, you're gonna put me on the spot. I Googled this because I knew this question was coming.
I asked you a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. I should remember that, right? Let me go grab my phone. So, construction manager at risk, Nick Vivian, please help me if I fumble through this, is the construction manager at risk. It places the onus of the cost of the project on the construction management firm, that they have skin in the game, that they are looking out for the best interests of the city because they are holding the subcontractors to their bid amount, and anything over that, they are at risk of basically covering those overages. So it's a pretty simple most of the, yeah.
Well said.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You're not going anywhere, right?
Oh, any other questions? I figured it's, it's close here, 9 o'clock.
You got another item right after this.
I don't have to talk to that. That's Chief's item.
You're out the door.
I move to approve the at-risk services RFP for 2101 O'Neill Road.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action to approve the construction manager at risk services RFP and authorize staff to solicit proposals for the renovation of 1201 Hanley Road.
Yep. Same process, different facility.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Mike. So I don't really have anything other than preparation for tomorrow. We've got a long, long day ahead of us, and so we meet in here at 11:45. Is that right?
Yep.
And Mike, you want to go through the process at all, or it's all
Yep.
pretty well lined up?
Yep, and then you'll
laid
convene
out?
into closed session, and I sent out the schedule to everybody, the finalized schedule today. The process is pretty clear to do the interview of the 5 finalists, and, hopefully we've come to the conclusion and get successful recruitment wrapped up.
Yeah. It's our hope. Anybody? Anything?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Okay, let me show you this.